What is so good about Super Mario Odyssey? What makes this game so special? Why is everyone praising it so highly? Well, let's try and break it down. So Super Mario Odyssey was first introduced to us earlier this year, and Nintendo basically told us that this game is kind of more like Mario 64 or Sunshine, rather than Galaxy or 3D World. What that means is that we're exploring more kingdoms that are more sandboxy. They're like these giant playgrounds that you can go around and explore. They're very open, as opposed to games like levels like in Galaxy, where they're kind of more like linear obstacle courses. So what that means is that with Mario Odyssey, there's a lot of freedom, and in a sense, there's some similarities with Breath of the Wild. In fact, when you go into these worlds, you're going to see a lot of different points of interest, right? And you're going to end up being gravitated towards one and then another and then another, and just going to get lost in it, kind of like in Breath of the Wild. And by doing this, it really helps the player to get incredibly engaged. But not only that, it's the way all these worlds are put together, where the way everything is refined and fit together in its design. Somehow Nintendo has found a way to appeal to a vast amount of people by doing this. So what I mean is, when you go into these different kingdoms, you can go look for a moon or what have you, and then you can go straight to the main objective. You can go straight to the main objective, and then the next one, then the next one, and if you just play in that way, you can get to the end of the story, the credits, right, and be done within about 10 hours of playing the game. And that would be about maybe 25% of the game if you really rush through it. However, there's a lot of other people who might be more like completionists, who will stay within one kingdom and look through all the nooks and crannies to try to find as many moons as possible, and after a dozen hours in one kingdom, they still will not have found every single one. And then there are people who will just focus on the mini games and try to get as high as they can on the leaderboards. And there are other people who will notice that they don't actually have to do every single moon to get to the main boss or get past the main boss to the next level. They will find ways to just get the fastest moons that they can acquire and then just move on. So there's a lot of different ways to play this game. Like, for example, I actually am not a fan of the motion controls in Mario Odyssey, but the way it's designed, I don't have to play with them, and I don't feel like I'm missing it in any way. I don't have to go to the options and turn off motion controls or anything like that. It's just the way the game is constructed, I never really need to use it at all. Now, I have tried out the motion controls, and they feel fine. Joy-Cons work fine. They're satisfactory, for sure, and I've heard a lot of people actually enjoy them. But for me personally, I prefer the stability of the Pro Controller. Occasionally, I do push the controller to the right to do like a little spin attack. But aside from that, I don't need to do it, and I only do it because I like doing it, honestly. But I don't like doing everything else that you would do with the Joy-Cons. So I don't do it, and it doesn't affect me in any way. But that's just the thing about Mario Odyssey. It appeals to different kinds of gamers, and there's so much variety, there's so much to do in this game, it's kind of crazy. Like, for example, you might go from one moment where you're literally being chased by a Tyrannosaurus Rex on a scooter to flying down on a lizard from a giant tower, and then the next moment you'll be in a body of water that teleports you to a kingdom that's on fire. Like, all these sorts of things are happening in Mario Odyssey. It's kind of crazy. But nevertheless, there's just so much you can do, there's so much to explore, so much to find, that you can get lost in this game. And it's pretty open-ended. Yeah, there are some main objectives that offer some linearity to the game, but aside from that, you can collect moons in any way, and eventually you can go back to different kingdoms, and there's a lot you can do, there's a lot of freedom, and it's pretty great. Now, in terms of the graphics, the game is colorful, each kingdom is very varied, everything looks really good, the detail is impressive. Like, I really get the sense this is like the Mario game I've sort of always dreamed of. It's my ideal Mario. Like, when I heard Nintendo was making an HD console, this is the kind of Mario game I had in mind in terms of the way it looks. Now, in terms of performance, the game is running at 900p. Well, it can run between 900p and 720p. It's like a variable resolution. And then it's always running at 60 frames per second. So it always feels smooth all the time. However, there was a moment when I went to New Donk City, and I had heard there were frame rate drops if you move around your camera and look at the skyscrapers in the background. And I did notice like a jarring stutter. I really did notice it, and it did actually bother me. It really did. However, after the first couple of moments of like checking that out, I never noticed it again, and I've put in at least about 10 hours into New Donk City, so, you know, it didn't bother me after that point. So it's kind of a really minor gripe, but it is there, but you won't see it unless you look for it, and I mean, that's pretty much it. For the most part, the frame rate is running at 60 frames per second 99.999% of the time, so no biggie. Now, in terms of music, every kingdom has its own like score, but it's not just one singular soundtrack. It kind of depends on what part of the kingdom you're in. Like, some parts will be more tranquil, you just kind of focus on ambient noises, but there are other parts that will sort of have these giant set pieces that really illustrate what's going on within the world around you. And even there are some climactic moments within the actual story of the game that bring on vocals, and those can really offer some pretty impactful and emotional moments. It's very well done and very well put together. Which does bring me to the story. The story, well, I mean, of course, it's classic Mario has to go save Peach from Bowser, but the way it's done is very unique and interesting, and honestly, I love the way it's carried out. It's the best execution for Mario Go Save Peach story we've ever seen, and I love it. It's really great. But the thing is, when you beat the main story, that's not even maybe at 20%, 25% of the game. It kind of depends how much moons you got on the way there. Like, there's so much game afterwards. There's over 900 moons, and you only need like 200 something moons to actually beat the game, something like that. So it's incredible, like, just how much more of this game there is in the post game. Like, the post game is like the real bulk of the game, because the thing is, like, there are so many moons out there, and yeah, if you're not into challenging games, you can just get the easy moons and call it a day. But for those completionists out there, there are so many moons everywhere, and there's tons of challenges and obstacle courses and different levels and characters to interact with. It's insane, and it's just fun. There's so many different things to do. It's just great. This game offers so much for so many different kinds of people that's why I think it's so special about this game. It's gonna last forever, and you can play it in so many different ways, so people are going to come back and find different ways to play this game, even if you're a speedrunner, if you just like interacting with different things, if you want to find, or if you just want to find a way to jump across a vast expanse with the different, like, combinations that Mario has this time around. For the record, Mario's actual moveset this time around is more varied than any other, but the way it's applied is very simplistic. It's kind of one of those things where it's easy to pick up, but it's tough to master. That's essentially what they did with Mario's moves this time around. But everything's kind of taken to a whole other level when you take into consideration that Mario uses Cappy, and Cappy can possess a whole bunch of creatures, and they will basically become their own characters, and you can do a bunch of things with them that interact with the kingdoms in completely different ways all the time. So it just makes the variety in gameplay there's just too much of it. Like, well, not literally too much, it's just a lot. And you're always kind of doing something new, something different, something fresh, and that's pretty much everything in Mario Odyssey. Everything is interesting. There's always a secret to be found everywhere, and you could essentially play this game, I don't know for how long. It's extremely long. It's the biggest Super Mario game we've ever played. So I sort of run down some of the things about Mario Odyssey, but really what makes Mario Odyssey so special is that, like Breath of the Wild, it has you going from point to point to point because there are all these different interesting things to see and find, and it gravitates you towards them, and by doing this it really engages you, and by doing that it just keeps you constantly engaged no matter what kind of player you are, because you can choose how to play the game. You may see multiple points and you decide to go to this one or this one. If it's challenging, you'll try it differently, or if you want to see if you can actually make it across a giant expanse, you can try it out. And there'll be minimal punishment because you don't lose lives, you just lose coins. But that doesn't mean the game is easy, because some of those obstacle courses or challenges you'll have to do repeatedly if you really want to get past it. So the game is just really designed in a way to appeal to everyone, but also engage everyone constantly. There's so much variety, and the execution is so refined and polished, and the movements are so great that this is the ideal Mario game. Nintendo really went all out with this one. It's an amazing game, and I love how Nintendo seems to have discovered a way to appeal to a really large audience with this open-endedness that's constantly keeping people engaged and going towards one point and then another, and then another, and then another. It's awesome. And you should really check out Mario Odyssey. I think if you care about games and you have a chance to get out the Switch, you'll really like this game. So yeah, that's my review. That's why I think it's so special. Check it out. If you have any opinions or comments, leave them in the comments below. And I'll see you all really soon. Bye.